Welcome to Underdog Off-Road's Esperance to Point Malcolm adventure. In a completely random order, you can follow us as Chris and myself fill in most of the coastal stretches that we missed last time using our off-road Falcons. Our journey starts by watching Chris drive past on the highway. Quick past Josh, chase him down. Once he was cornered at Lake Young, home of the 1964 water speed record, it was time to make our way to Esperance. I didn't think our yacht was going to beat the Campbell 444 km/h record today. On the east side of Bandy Creek Boat Harbour, just east of Esperance, we finally hit the beach on the way to Cape Legrand. This stretch of coast is great for a beginner to rack up some kilometres of beach driving experience, as it is firm and wide. Wiley Rock is the only obstacle along the way. This can be driven around, however there is no need when you are driving a Falcon. The low approach angle does mean this obstacle has to be taken on an angle as so. This line is only possible with diff lock or similar. In a higher clearance vehicle without diff lock, you are much better off hitting it square on. I also recommend low range if available. You can hear the torque converters working hard since we don't have that option. Maintaining a little speed is the best thing that you can do to minimise the heat that you are throwing at them.
Well, I'm up.
Yep, the departure angle isn't any better.
Driving along the Grand Beach with the 2WDing Falcon Wagons. Sensational. Most of the beach is pretty smooth, so cruising on 40 k's an hour. We did let tyres down to 10 psi, but haven't really needed it. So it's all good. Most of the beach is like concrete. There's a few spots that are a bit soft though.
Now, somebody forgot to tighten up the breather on their jerry can. This smell became very apparent when heading down Wiley Rock. So that night at camp, we cleaned Chris's things. Good thing is we always have excess water. For this trip, I'm carrying one jerry can of fuel plus the boat fuel tank on the roof on a flat narrow rack underneath the dinghy. And for the remainder of this trip, Chris's jerry can found its way on the roof. The following day we headed to Dunn Rocks to fill in our exploration gap between Cape Legrand and Victoria Harbour. But first up, a quick play on the dunes. The beach from Dunn's Rock to Victoria Harbour is as firm as a highway. You just have to watch out for wildlife and a few rivers. You wouldn't want to hit one of these banks at speed. Oh, I forgot about that soft bit. Always be prepared with soft tyres.
Stop here for a quick look. I reckon if we come back this way later and it's warm and we want to swim, that's the spot right there.
I think I agree with that. Looks great. Straight after our swim, we encountered our first pod of dolphins for the trip. We ended up seeing 4 pods in total, and they were all fairly close encounters. And with just one small bay in between us and Victoria Harbour, we encountered an impassable rock. So with that, we had no choice but to turn around. Not to worry, this was one of the most scenic drives of our trip, and we would definitely go back again.
Driving along the beach back towards Dunn's Rock. Or Dunn Rocks. Can't remember. Doesn't matter.
On the west side of Dunn Rocks, we found a much softer beach which led all the way back to Cape LeBrand. Since we've already been here before, we decided to do a U-turn on the softest part of the beach just to see how we go. Chris started off by using a more sensible route and going down on the compact sand, but I wanted to pretend the beach is much narrower, and this is what happens. The goal here is to only turn the steering wheel the smallest amount at a time, and just make half tyre width progress as you're turning. The reason for this is the undriven wheels quickly turn into anchors as soon as you turn the wheel too much or go into soft sand. Don't get impatient and spin the wheels, as that just wrecks up your compacted sand that you work so hard to create. A more gentle approach and just gradually compacting the sand with those little bits of momentum is the key. Glad to get that out of my system. From here we refueled at Conding Up and shot over to Cape Arad. The main event of this trip was to travel the remote stretch from Poison Creek to Point Falcon. But first of all, we stopped in for camp at our old faithful Thomas Fishery in Hill Springs. Hill Springs is a beautiful part of the world, but would have been incredibly remote for the pioneering settlers in the early 1900s. Thomas Fishery was an old whaling station from a similar time. This protected bay would have been a great place to launch and water boats. I'm guessing this is possibly one of the old rowboats they may have used, I'm not really sure. Don't really know what the concrete's for unless we're just trying to sink the thing. But I'm very impressed with the stainless steel used at the back of this. Please let us know if you have any other ideas on what this was, or any of the history behind it. Mount Arad towers in the background, which we'll be climbing later, but as we found out, there is a better side of the mountain to climb from. Don't climb up on the eastern side, climb up on the western side, where there's a walk trail. There's the island where the outboard conked out last time we were in the area. There's a bit of a long way back from there, but that's okay. We're still alive. And behind that island is Middle Island, which one day I'd like to visit, but in a larger boat. Well, anyway, it was time to head over to Poison Creek to start our remote part of this journey. The power steering hose fell off on the AU. Bit unfortunate, we've lost power steering. Easy to put the hose on to repair, but we're going to have to double back into town to get through it. Actually, we're too lazy for that. Engine oil in the power steering. It's not quiet. It did quieten down once all the bubbles were out of the system, but we did have some doubt in our minds, which, as the power steering slowly got better and better, we grew to ignore and just moved on with the trip.
You ready?
Chris quickly wanted to test out my 4,500 pound ATV hitch mounted winch. Good chance to show it off, I guess, so he diffed out on a rock. The winch definitely got him out of trouble effortlessly. It takes about a minute extra to set up than a permanently mounted winch, but it is quite fast to set up. Just put the hitch in, plug her in, and it goes. It's not going to get you off a steep muddy mountain, but it does get you out of small spots of bother like this. Great if travelling solo in tree country.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
The beach did start off as a highway, but we ended up getting a few narrow, steeper sections which were a lot softer. They started off not too bad, but they seemed to get progressively harder as we worked our way to the far end of the beach. In the Forester, I wouldn't even hesitate to drive through this, but we were just being extra cautious being in two two-wheel drive Falcons. The biggest disadvantage of no drive to the front wheels is the lack of steering. Once you get a bit of an angle, it becomes hard to keep the cars in the ruts. If it's just one set of well-worn ruts, it's not too bad, the car will sit in them. But when you've got all of these crisscrossing shallow ruts, it keeps bouncing around and turns into a bit of a pain. As we made our way to the far end of the beach did get a bit softer, but there was also less traffic. And that meant it was easier to follow the main set of tracks. Here's another example of rear-wheel drive not steering particularly well in the sand. Chris was trying to follow the tracks, but just it was a bit of a tighter turn, so it bounced out.
Well, it didn't want to follow the track, that's for sure.
I was wondering why you're going that way.
I tried steering in and it just wouldn't go. I'll try again.
Once Chris made this fresher track, it was far easier for me to follow.
Nice was easy, but managed to get it in.
Thanks for making some tracks for me.
No problem.
Another advantage of being the second car is Chris was clearing all the seaweed off the beach for me. He soon noticed that it was accumulating around his exhaust, so he wanted to get it off real quick.
Just had to get it away from the exhaust real quick.
Fair enough, don't want a seaweed fire.
Gonna move it back a bit, hopefully leave it all behind. See whether I can get the rest out.
Our next underdog tip is to use gloves when working around the hot exhaust. Chris had a set of gloves, just wasn't wearing them.
Fortunately, I did burn my hand a few times though.
Oh yeah, you accumulated a bit.
Yeah, all that plus all that. This bit was just like twisted around. That stick was under there too, which came in handy.
Reach the summit, holding out parsley.
We went all the way along the beach. We didn't get bogged.
One of those points is the point we're going to. To be honest, Poison Creek Beach had a lot more traffic on it than we were expecting, so it wasn't too remote by our standards. As soon as we were past this beach, up to Mount Parsley and beyond, it became proper remote. All the tracks became much more overgrown, you could see much less traffic had been through. It looks like an intense angle.
It is very. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to get past this. Okay, apparently we can. Go to the right.
Yay. The goal in this terrain is to keep your wheels on the high bits and avoid the hulls. This type of ant has a nasty bite, so avoid being bitten. If you do get bitten, you will survive, as Chris is still alive. While we're getting closer to our barren destination, it became apparent that fuel usage was a lot worse than we expected. Due to the softness of our initial beach run, we averaged 25 litres per 100 instead of the 22 litres per 100 that we were allowed for. If everything went smoothly and we reached Point Malcolm and took the more fuel-efficient fisheries route back, I'm confident we would have still completed the journey. However, if we found an impassable object close to Point Malcolm at our furthest point and had to double back along the fuel-guzzling beach, I'm not so confident we would have made it. It would have been very close. So these are the things you have to consider when off-roading in remote parts. And at the approximate location of this butterfly, we decided it was time to turn around and play it safe.
I can see where your tow bar was.
tow bar scraps a few things.
Alright, on through. Stick to the left pretty hard. Going.
Getting there slowly.
Stopped at the track a bit just to make sure you make it.
I'm in the plants.
Oh, excellent.
Oh, there's a lizard on the track.
You what?
There's a lizard on the track. This could take a while.
Oh, okay, rightio.
The AU's engine was getting a bit hot, so we've left the car running and opened the bonnet to let it cool down. Important to keep the engine running when it's hot, so everything keeps circulating, causing it to cool down evenly to avoid warping. While we've strayed a long way off our plan, this did give us a great camp spot with yet another dolphin visit. Plus, this put us in a better location for fishing and boating during our best weather day, which is tomorrow. This will feature in part 2, which you can catch next time. Plus there'll be a special comparison on Holden Adventurer vs Ford RTV in our part 3. See you then.